Everybody, I don't care where you are, if you're working in a team, you are paying something called the trust tax. Anyone heard this term before? Okay, comes from Stephen M.R. Covey. That's the son of the Stephen Covey we all know and love. The trust tax is not a metaphor. It is a literal economic price that we pay because of a lack of trust in our teams. We pay it through having to have redundant decision makers. We pay it through employee turnover. We pay it through wasted time. Now, we pay this trust tax regardless of if we are communicating digitally or in person. This is a given. We pay varying degrees of the trust tax depending on what industry or company you work in, but we all pay it. But let's look at what happens with virtual communication, because we stack some obstacles on top of the trust tax when we go virtual. This concept is called social distance. Anyone heard this term before? Real simple definition. Social distance is simply the level of emotional connection that exists between people. But do you imagine social distance is greater or smaller when we're talking about virtual teams? Much, much greater. Now think about this. How many people do work in an office? In other words, you're not a remote worker. Okay, think about this morning between 8 a.m. when you arrived and noon when you got here, all the little micro interactions you had with people around the office this morning. The person you passed through on the way to the bathroom, the person you told a joke to, the person you shared an idea with. All those little micro interactions where you're gathering data. You don't realize you're doing it, but you're gathering data about the people around you. What makes them tick? How you should interpret the things that they say, what motivates them, who their kids are. And you take all that data with you into that meeting where you have a sticky conflict you've got to figure out. And now everything they say in that meeting, you're able to interpret through the lens of all those other interactions you've had with them. Now think about your digital or your virtual teams. How often are you meeting with them on average? Once a week, twice a week, maybe? When do you meet? What prompts you to meet with someone virtually? When there's a problem, right? When there's a problem to solve or a decision that gets made. Do you ever just call them for the heck of it? I mean, being honest, probably not a ton. So the only time you're meeting with them is when you have to do an activity that fundamentally takes a lot of trust. But you aren't doing those sort of background processes you do in person to build that trust to take in with you to that conflict. So what that creates is an additional tax that we're going to talk about in a moment.